Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the regular meeting of the Board of Commissioners of Haverford Township. I'd like to announce that the board met in executive session at 6 p.m. tonight on personnel and real estate matters. Mr. Gentili, would you please call the roll?
Mr. D'Amelio? Here. Mr. Oliva? Here. Mr. McCluskey? Here. Mr. Siegel? Here. Lewis?
Here.
McGarity?
Here.
Dr. Hart? Here. Mr. Holmes? Here. And Mr. Wexler?
Here. I'd ask everybody to please stand for the opening prayer, which will be, the benediction will be offered by the Reverend James Cox from Annunciation Parish, and then afterwards to remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Heavenly Father, as our commissioners meet this evening to work together for the good of our community, we pray that they may be mindful of your presence and seek to please you in their discourse, their listening, and in the decisions they make. Strengthen them in their resolve to be impartial and fair, thoughtful and kind, that those for whom they serve may know that they have been served well and the common good has been upheld. We ask you to assist all of us as a community that we may seek to uphold the dignity of each person we serve as neighbors, friends, and public servants. We ask these and all that is truly good in your holy name. Amen.
Amen. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Over there.
Okay. Yeah, hit it. Hit the flag. Our first order of business is a happy one. Mrs. Pacello from the Civil Service Commission. Would you please come forward? Oh, I'm sorry. We have one appointment. I'm sorry. Wait, one quick thing. We have to appoint I misread, so. There's a motion.
Almost got bagged.
Larry's motion.
Mr. Gentili, do you have a recommendation on appointment?
Yes, Mr. Wexler, thank you. I would ask this board's approval to allow me to promote Amy Cuthbertson, our finance director, to the position of assistant township manager effective this evening.
I'd make a motion that we accept the township manager's recommendation. Second. Motion is seconded. Please call the roll.
Mr. D'Amelio? Yes. Mr. Oliva?
Yes.
Mr. McCluskey?
Yes.
Mr. Siegel?
Yes.
Mr. Lewis?
Yes.
Mr. McGarity?
Wonderful choice.
Dr. Hart?
Yes. Is that a yes?
Holmes?
Yes.
Mr. Wexler?
Absolutely yes. Congratulations, Mr. And now, Mrs. Pacello, you have the honor. My apologies again.
You have the list.
Yeah, we do have a list, I believe. I don't have it.
Where?
It was emailed to you.
Yeah, they have a list.
We're good.
We got it.
Excuse me. On behalf of the Police Civil Service Commission, I'm presenting to the board for approval a certified list of eligible candidates who have met the required qualifications and completed the required procedures in order to be considered for an entry-level position in our police department.
Thank you. Mrs. Pacello is asking for approval. I'd ask for a motion to accept the Civil Service Commission entry-level police officers list.
Motion, Mr. Wexler.
Mr. D'Amelio, is there seconded by Mr. Oliva? Call the roll.
Mr. D'Amelio? Yes. Mr. Oliva?
Yes.
McCluskey?
Yes.
Mr. Siegel?
Yes.
Mr. Lewis?
Yes.
McGarity?
Yes.
Dr. Hart? Yes. Mr. Holmes?
Yes.
And Mr. Wexler?
Yes. Mrs. Pacello.
The following top-ranking candidates who are to be considered for appointment are, and there are 5 vacancies, Anthony Patterson, Benjamin Kiliojor, Lawrence McLaughlin.
Mr. President?
Mr. Holmes.
Mr. President, I move we nominate
Anthony Patterson.
Patterson.
Second.
Mr. Patterson's been nominated and seconded.
Your Honor, Mr. President, I move we close nominations.
Second.
Nominations are, all in favor of closing?
Aye.
Please call the roll for Mr. Patterson.
Mr. D'Amelio?
Mr. Patterson.
Mr. Oliva?
Mr. Patterson.
McCluskey?
Patterson.
Mr. Siegel?
Mr. Patterson.
Mr. Lewis?
Patterson.
McGarity?
Mr. Patterson.
Dr. Hart?
Mr. Patterson.
Mr. Holmes?
Mr. Patterson.
And Mr. Wexler.
Anthony Patterson.
Commissioners, if I may, Anthony Patterson is 28 years old, married to his wife Melissa. They currently reside in Folsom with their son Anthony Jr. Anthony comes to us from the Temple University Police Department.
Welcome aboard.
Then we have Benjamin Killiajor, Lawrence McLaughlin, and Peter Plausis.
What's the name?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that name, Benjamin? Benjamin's last name?
What was the first choice?
Where's Benjamin? How do you say your name, sir?
Killiajor.
Kelly O'Jor.
Thank you.
So I'll make a motion to appoint Benjamin Killiajor. We're going to kill your name, that's for sure.
Second.
Second.
Your paycheck will be spelled correctly, trust me.
Nothing to worry about, really.
Motion made. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded.
Seconded by Mr. McGarity.
Close nominations for this position.
All in favor of closing nominations for this position?
Aye.
Aye. Please call the roll.
Mr. D'Amelio?
I'll try again. Benjamin Killiajor. Yeah.
Mr. Oliva?
Benjamin Killiajoy.
Mr. McCluskey?
Mr. Killiajor.
Mr. Siegel?
Mr. Killiajoy.
Mr. Lewis?
Mr. Killiajoy.
McGarity?
My friend, Mr. Kelly.
Dr. Hart?
Mr. Killiajor.
Mr. Holmes?
Benjamin Killiajoy.
And Mr. Wexler.
Mr. Killiojor. Okay.
Commissioners, Benjamin is 23 years old, is a resident of Norristown. He's a graduate of Gwinnett Mercy University, where he received his BS in criminal justice. Benjamin graduated the police academy in June 2017 and will be embarking on his first police job with Haverford Township.
And now we have Lawrence McLaughlin, Peter Plausis, Evan Hanna.
I'll make a motion to appoint Lawrence McLaughlin.
Second.
Motion made and seconded for Mr. McLaughlin.
Mr. President, I move we close nominations for this position.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. All in favor of closing?
Aye.
Aye.
Please call the roll.
Mr. D'Amelio?
Mr. McLaughlin.
Mr. Oliva?
Mr. McLaughlin.
Mr. McCluskey?
Mr. McLaughlin.
Mr. Siegel?
Mr. McLaughlin.
Mr. Lewis?
Mr. McLaughlin.
Mr. McGarity?
Mr. McLaughlin.
Dr. Hart?
Mr. McLaughlin.
Mr. Holmes?
Mr. McLaughlin.
And Mr. Wexler.
Mr. McLaughlin.
Commissioners, Lawrence is 26 years old, is a resident of Springfield, Delaware County. He graduated from St. John's University with a BS in criminal justice. Lawrence comes to us from Fallcroft and Eddystone Police Departments, where he has worked as a part-time police officer.
Welcome aboard.
Welcome aboard.
And we have Peter Plausis, Kevin Hanna, Lawrence Todd IV. Excuse me.
Thank you.
Mr. President? Is it
Your last
Plausis or
name.
Plusis?
Who?
Plausis.
Plausis?
Plausis?
Plausis. P-L-O-U.
Plausis.
S. P-L-O-U-S-I-S.
Thank you.
Mr. President, I nominate Peter Plausis.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Is there a motion to close?
Motion to close.
Second.
Seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Please call the roll.
Mr. D'Amelio?
Mr. Plausis.
Mr. Oliva?
Mr. Plausis.
McCluskey?
Mr. Plausis.
Mr. Siegel?
Mr. Plausis.
Mr. Lewis?
Mr. Plausis.
McGarity?
Mr. Closing.
Dr. Hart?
Mr. Plausis.
Mr. Holmes?
Mr. Plausis.
And Mr. Wexler.
Mr. Plausis.
Commissioners, Peter is 28 years old and is married to his wife Christine. Peter and his wife currently reside in Springfield with their son. He graduated from the Williamson Trade School. Peter comes to us from the Philadelphia Police Department.
Welcome aboard.
Okay, we have Kevin Hanna, Lawrence Todd IV, and Richard Mangini.
Chairman,
Mr. D'Amelio.
motion for Kevin Hanna.
Second.
Motion made and seconded.
Mr. President, I move we close nominations.
Second.
All in favor of closing?
Aye.
Aye. Please call the roll, Mr. Hannah.
Mr. D'Amelio?
Hanna.
Mr. Oliva?
Hannah.
Mr. McCluskey?
Hannah.
Mr. Siegel?
Mr. Hannah.
Mr. Lewis?
Mr. Hannah.
Mr. McGarity?
Mr. Hannah.
Dr. Hart?
Mr. Hannah.
Mr. Holmes?
Mr. Hannah.
And Mr. Wexler.
Mr. Kevin Hannah.
Commissioners, Kevin is 24 years old and is a resident of Drexel Hill. He has graduated from Delaware County Community College with a degree in criminal justice. Kevin comes to us from the Morton and Yaden Police Departments, where he has worked part-time with both departments.
Welcome aboard.
Commissioners, thank you for your support with the police department. We've been short for a while with retirements, and with your continued support, we'll be able to give you the same level of service that you expect from us. Thank you again.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, absolutely.
Congratulations. Congratulations.
I feel like I'm stopping.
Congratulations.
Congratulations. Congratulations.
Well done.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
My paralegal knows your family.
Yeah, we'll all squish.
Gentlemen, come on up here, we'll get a
I'd ask the
picture.
commissioners to come into the center here. We're going to take a picture with the officers.
Get out of your way here.
Doesn't matter, I'm always small.
Great job. Congratulations.
These are these.
Oh, they're mine, yeah. They're yours, they're mine, right?
Yours, I guess.
Yeah.
Next item is any appointments, boards, and committees. Senior citizen for Ward 1. For that? Okay. And any appointment for the vacancy committee?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Mr. McGarry.
I'd like to appoint Mr. Connor Quinn for the vacancy committee.
Second.
Motion for Mr. Connor Quinn to serve on the vacancy committee for a one-year term to expire December 31st, 2019. Motion made and seconded. Any other nominations? Your motion to close nominations?
Motion to close.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Please call the roll.
Mr. D'Amelio?
Mr. Quinn.
Mr. Oliva?
Connor Quinn.
Mr. McCluskey?
Mr. Quinn.
Mr. Siegel?
Mr. Quinn.
Mr. Lewis?
Mr. Quinn.
McGarity?
Mr. Quinn.
Dr. Hart?
Connor Quinn.
Mr. Holmes?
Mr. Quinn.
And Mr. Wexler.
Mr. Quinn.
I apologize, Mr. Quinn. My age is showing.
Only as young as you feel, Mr. McGarry. Next item is any commissioner committee updates.
Mr. President, the EAC at Mr. Gentili's request is going to look at, we've had a recent increase in our cost of recycling. They're going to look at to see if there's any alternatives to lower the cost.
Okay.
And Mr. President, the Finance Committee reviewed one of the items that will be on the agenda later, the window ordinance for the pension incentive.
Okay, thank you very much. No other updates? The Township Auditor's update? Yeah, you can face that way. That way the public can see you. We get your best side.
All right. I reviewed the monthly expenses and disbursements. All my questions have been answered to my satisfaction, and there were no material irregularities. The one irregularity there is that I'm from Michigan, so I was actually a little disappointed last week, but Villanova did play one heck of a game.
At this time, we move to the citizens forum. Our first group is the registered speakers. And Mr. Paul Gauss.
Can I put my map up?
Sure.
Yeah, you can stick it right up here.
You guys can hear me okay?
Yeah, we're going to ask you to go to the microphone so the people at home can hear you as well.
Yeah.
There's also a portable mic.
He's got the camera set for there.
You can have it face the commissioners. As well. Great.
Why don't you give him that mic then?
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to come in here and speak with you.
You can use this, so you can actually stand right,
Okay.
right there.
Yeah. My name is Paul Gauss. I live at 1004 Crest Road, 8th Ward, and I'm here to discuss some issues that we have with parking along Crest Road. I've noticed a problem with, and I live just about right here. I'd like to orient you as well. North is this way, and this is my view of the world from my home right here on Crest Road. And looking to this, over the last several years, we've had a progressive influx of commuter parking along Crest Road. It is entirely parked in both sides of Crest Road, a 23-foot road, leaving only about 10 feet for there to pass. The reason for this congestion that we're experiencing is because commuter parking for both the Penfield and at times the Beechwood Station. These areas here, the reason I know this, I observe them, I see the same cars parking there every day, and when I take the train in, I can follow the crowd from right down Crest Road and go to the Penfield Station. The reason that we have this is that I have in yellow here the area where my resident neighbors along Powder Mill have solicited and received permit parking restrictions, 2-hour or 3-hour restriction Monday through Friday. And what happened is that moved the parking for the Penfield stop right up to us on Crest Road. We're going to be engaged in a process of getting permit parking for our section of Crest Road. But gentlemen, let me tell you, I present this to you in hopes that we can arrive at a comprehensive solution from the strategic level, because we're dealing with a game of whack-em. Because our problem originated when it was addressed here. Here. Also, there's some area of Hampstead Road as well that's affected now. It's going to move there and perhaps affect Aikens Road as well, even perhaps up to as far as Remington. The reason that we have this is the red crossed hatched areas here is where there are parking restrictions from the neighboring township on one side of the road parking. And you can see we have a lot of green space as well, which is of course a protected area, and we enjoy this as well. So we tracked a lot of traffic here, but this is the issue that we have. We have no sidewalks along this area. It's a narrow street. The blocks here, they were designed and built in the 30s as a residential area. Adding to the problem, along my side of the road, we have shared driveways, which requires cooperation between the neighbors as well. And the driveways are narrow and steep. When these are parked in, we've had calls to the police on several occasions because of driveways being parked in and accessibility. So I would like to open this matter for consideration as we address the matter on our particular street for a comprehensive solution, because, you know, we're a residential area. We're not commuter parking for SEPTA stations. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm all in favor of mass transit, and I'm glad to see people using it. I just think there needs to be other solutions, and some of these are mass transit, because the distance from Haverford down to this, and I did it with my odometer, is about 0.5 to 0.6 tenths of a mile. Further up here is Earlington. Earlington is 0.2 to 0.3 miles away. Bottom line, it's walkable with public transportation. Further down, we have Ardmore Junction and the Ardmore stops, which are served by bus lines and public transportation. So it's not a hardship for anyone who wants to use public transportation to join at perhaps other areas that are more sufficiently serviced with parking. So those are the issues that I raised, and I appreciate the opportunity to present it to you.
Thank you, Mr. Gauze.
Just ask a question. You talked about I'm just curious as to what you think is the comprehensive solution.
Well, let me tell you, I think discussion, because in this area here, there's parking on one side of the street only, and something like that would not help us at all, simply because that would not do anything to review.
That Lower Marine?
Yeah, that wouldn't do anything to relieve the congestion that we see. The other thing is that these individuals here, the other reason I do this is because our neighboring ward on Beechwood, I mean, I run through this neighborhood and walk through my neighborhood so I can see this. The Beechwood area has, and these roads up here, Lakeside and on to Delmont, have similar issues with parking all the way up this side as well. So, you know, there's several areas involved that would require a coordinated effort, and that's why I present it.
Okay. And we'll address that at the end of the comment section. We typically address the comments rather than go back and forth now. So thank you very much, Mr. Gauze.
Actually, let me just ask two questions.
Yes.
Sir, the folks on Crest Road, do you folks have driveways?
Yes, a shared driveway.
Shared driveways. And there's two-sided parking on the street?
Yes, there's two-sided parking.
Do people on the street want that limited to one side?
No, I can tell you that the people that I've spoken with my neighbors up and down along this area, we favor permit restriction rather than one side because that wouldn't address our problems.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Gauze.
Any other questions?
No.
Thank you.
Our second speaker is Mr. Chad Brooks.
Grange. Down here with Betty today. Yeah, Betty, yeah. And they own the Grange, her parents. Any firearms?
Even Chad.
It's a little strange to face out this way and not talk to you.
Yeah, we're trying to figure out which way we want to go. So.
What I handed out was the schedule. I'm speaking tonight as the township's representative to the Grange Estate. The Grange Estate is an historic mansion located in the corner of the township, an historic property. We just reopened from the winter. We closed for the winter season. This weekend was the opening weekend, and the mansion is now open for tours. A lot of people came for Christmas time, but it's much different. The house looks different, it feels different, and you get a more in-depth historic review by coming in for the tours now. One of the things I want to do tonight is thank the township, the Public Works Department in particular, for managing us through a difficult winter, keeping the roads clear and taking care of the property. Like everybody else in township, we suffered some losses. The township has done a great job and has promised us that they'll continue to remove fallen trees and fallen property. A number of them were marked. In addition, we're trying to determine what to do about ash. As some of you may know, the ash borer is devastating ashes in this part of the country. and we've had to make some sacrifices in order to save some of the more historic trees by treating them. We do want to thank the township also. We have, the Grange is well known, but one of the outstanding things about the Grange is the number of outbuildings that survived in the 21st century. Of all the historic homes in the area, we have one of the largest collection of outbuildings. One of these, the Lower Spring House, was badly damaged in the storm. A tree fell on the roof. But we understand from Mr. Gentili that we will be getting a community block grant to help with the repair of that. And those houses are important. They are in use. That particular Lower Spring House was used to keep the supplies for the bees. We do have bees on the property. We create honey, and that honey is sold in the gift shop. So it's also a source of revenue. I'm also soliciting tonight, if you are interested in gardening, we are on a new aggressive gardening program. Ann Barnett is leading it up, and we're removing invasive species and going back to native species that will be kind to the native habitat, the native birds. And Margaret Hoffman was a great gardener. The Hoffmans both were gardeners, but Margaret in particular was a champion gardener, and we want to reflect that. She was the last owner of the Grange, and we want to reflect that in the gardens and bring the gardens back to life. So if you're interested in gardening, maybe you have a small property and you can't do as much gardening as you want, please join us. We're looking for people that are interested in that. We have a meeting May 3rd, and those of you that are members, please come to the May 3rd meeting. There'll be a goodbye from President Penn, who was the longest serving president of the board, but he has decided he would like to move on. He's going to stay on as helping us with the grounds, but he wants to pass the baton. So we're going to be electing a new president May 3rd. There will be a talk, the orphan train, and those of you may have heard about it. The orphan train was when they took orphans from the East Coast and transported them out to the West and Midwest. It's supposed to be a very interesting talk. We'll also have the elections for our offices, and light refreshments will be sold to served to kind of induce people to come in. The other events are there through the all the way to next Christmas, but in particular, I want to bring people's attention that we'll have an afternoon with Ben Franklin for the 4th of July weekend. Last year we had George Washington. It was a fantastic event. People really liked it. It was kid-oriented. There were a lot of families there, and we certainly encourage people to come out and meet Ben and celebrate the 4th of July with Ben Franklin. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brooks. And thank you to all the staff down at the Grange. They do a phenomenal job. Our next registered speaker is Anita Scullion.
I'd like to face you if I can.
Sure.
Can I turn this around?
Yep.
I'll get it, ma'am. I'll get it.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thought it looked easier. Yeah. Thanks very much.
You're welcome, ma'am. There you go.
Thank you. My name is Anita Scullin. I reside at 1529 Sunny Hill Lane in Havertown. I'm 72 years old, and I've been a resident of Haverford Township since 1950. I grew up here, I bought my houses here, and I raised my children here. I've been a voter in this township throughout my life. I vote consistently in presidential, midterm, and primary elections. I try to be an informed voter by investigating the platforms of candidates before casting my vote. In my lifetime, I've been registered as a Republican and a Democrat, and I have voted for Republicans and Democrats. I have voted for candidates who have won and for candidates who have lost. But no matter what the outcome, I've always voted with the confidence that my vote has been counted accurately and that the outcome of the election was fair and honest until now. For the first time since 1966, I will enter the voting booth unsure of whether my vote is being registered as cast. We've been made aware since the presidential election of 2016 of Russian interference in our electoral process, and the facts have proven that Russians have spread false information with cunning insights into their targets to influence votes. In September of 2017, the federal government told election officials in Pennsylvania that they were one of at least 21 states that Russian hackers targeted before the 2016 election. I cannot state that voting numbers were changed then, but I'm sure that Russian hackers have not been idle since, and that they've beefed up their efforts in cyber espionage, and that they're still hacking in Pennsylvania. So, in the elections of the futures, will hackers not only be spreading false information, but also hacking our voting machines and changing voting numbers? That's my concern. I've wondered what our government has done to address this threat, and here's what I've found. At the federal level, not too much has been done. According to the New York Times, the State Department was allocated $120 million in the final days of the Obama administration to counter foreign efforts to meddle in elections. It has yet to spend any of that money. In fact, Rex Tillerson, former Secretary of State, already threw in the towel on the issue, saying there's little that can be done. On the state level, Governor Wolf, according to the Associated Press, has ordered Pennsylvania counties that plan to replace their electronic voting systems to buy machines that leave a paper trail as a safeguard against hacking. However, his budget does not include any money to fund the replacement of all our state's aging and increasingly vulnerable electronic voting machines. Currently, the vast majority of Pennsylvania's 20,000 electronic voting machines leave no paper trail. These direct recording electronic machines make it almost impossible to know if they have actually recorded individual votes correctly or if anyone has tampered with the count. So why am I coming here to address you about this issue? Well, as Tip O'Neill famously said, all politics are local. And I vote here in Haverford Township, and you are the elected officials in Haverford Township. I'm wondering if you as a group have discussed this problem. I know you can't control false information on Facebook and Twitter, but I think you can address the security of our voting machines. I'm wondering how old the machines that we use in Haverford Township are. Do our voting machines leave a paper trail? And can you tell me how will I be able to know if my vote goes from Haverford Township to Delaware County to the state of Pennsylvania and to the federal government of the United States without being hacked or altered? I am personally contacting my state and federal elected officials about this situation too, but I'm just one individual. I'm hoping that you, as a group of elected officials, are also demanding that federal and state funds be allocated to replace all voting machines with machines that have paper backups. I feel that all of us together as citizens of this country, both individuals and elected officials alike, have to demand such changes loudly and clearly if we want to keep our elections fair and honest. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Yeah, when we get to that point. Yeah. That concludes our registered speakers. And now we open it up to the unregistered speakers, which may speak on any agenda item this evening. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to address the board on an agenda item? Yes, ma'am.
Non-agenda items.
Are you the only one that wants to speak later on? Okay, I'm willing to make an exception on behalf of the board so that we don't make you wait until the end if you'd like to come and address us now.
Can I use your portable mic, please? I don't want to turn my back to anybody.
Okay.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. I'm going to come over here so I don't have my back towards anybody.
I don't think it's on. Is it on?
You have to turn it on, I think.
Okay. Oh, it was on.
Then hold it up.
Yeah.
I Hi, my name is Nina Weber, and I'm a board member of Haverford Reserve Dog Park. I'm accompanied by 2 other members of the board, Jeannie Montgomery and Nicole McLean. Our park has been provided a community education program to help our constituents with concerns about their beloved 4-legged furry companions. May will begin the 3rd year we've offered this community education program, which includes 5 topics: obedience, dog park etiquette, canine health maintenance and disease prevention, handling scuffles, law-abiding dogs, and Owen, our dog warden, has helped me greatly with that one. We present each of these topics, several times during the summer to reach as many people as possible. Our brochures are available with more information, which, by the way, here, let me pass these down to you.
We'll start it now.
And there's more, if anybody else would like, and we have more available. Our upcoming schedule, beginning in May, will be our 3rd year presenting, and our schedule times will be posted on our website and our Facebook pages. We have 2 of them. Thank you for allowing me this opportunity to share how we are caring for our community with our park. And thank you very much for giving us the space to have a dog park in this township. Thank you.
Is there anyone else in the audience who wishes to address the board? So that closes the forum section. At this point, it's typically I address the comments. I'll go in order, and then I'll ask if any other commissioners want to put in their comments as well. Mr. Gauze, parking on Crest Road. I can actually empathize with you on a personal note because my daughter lives on Penfield, and I had babysitting duty the other day, and I was blocked in her driveway by 2 computers that, to the point that I literally had no option but to call a police officer and ticket them, and then we had to get them moved, so we pushed them back. But and her street is the same thing. It's on the other side of the tracks, obviously, but the problem goes in both directions because of computers parked. And we have had this problem. I've talked about it. I think other commissioners have spoken about it. Permit parking just pushes the problem a block further every time. So when we put, if you, 85% of your neighbors want permit parking in your street, they'll come, you'll get the commissioner, Dr. Hart will get permit parking approved, we'll approve it, and then 2 months later, the people in the next block, next street over, will be coming to us with similar issues. So I think it does need to be addressed from a strategic level throughout the township, not just at the one station, but at the other stations. And we need to work with SEPTA on that, as well as our police officers. We really have, you know, it's not efficient to have our police officers go around and just do parking disputes every morning when we know they're going to be there, if we know we can prevent them and we can then make better use of the limited resources we have on a street for public safety. And even though I know our police officers do not mind being called, they respond to every 911 call so that we log everything. And that's the appropriate way to do it, is to call 911, even though it's not a life and death emergency. That is the way to ask a police officer to get there. That generates a report. It gives our township a tracking mechanism to do it. But you are correct. We need to look at this commuter issue problem. And I promise I will serve on, I will volunteer on that committee. And we have other concerns. I mean, parking on both sides of the streets becomes an issue. As the police can tell you, they can't get larger vehicles down there. Our police chief is also a fire chief. Trying to negotiate a fire truck down your street when there's parking on both sides, or an ambulance, which is just as wide, if not wider, than some of the fire trucks, becomes a major issue. So we know we have a problem, and we should look at it strategically. And I thank you for coming forward. And I promise that I will ask the chief of police to look at a committee with 1 or 2 of us who want to volunteer to do it. And I certainly will volunteer, because not only do I get it here, I get it at home now from my second oldest daughter, who just had her 3rd child there. So I understand and empathize with it. I don't know if we can solve it 100%, but maybe we can mitigate the problems that you have as residents and get them there, and work with SEPTA as well as our police officers to do that. And we have other areas. We can actually combine that with other areas that have tight streets where we can't get emergency vehicles down at night with 2-sided parking. So But thank you for bringing that up. Second speaker is Mr. Brooks. Chad, thank you. Thank all the Grange people for what they do. Mr. McGarity, pass that along to your Mrs. McGarity, who chairs that.
Mr. Quinn's one of them.
Okay, Connor Quinn is there. So, but thank you for your efforts. That is a totally volunteer organization. I love it. I love going there with my grandkids at Christmas time for the shows, and especially for the train display. But the Christmas show, the demonstrations there, the decorations, and then the list of activities that you just gave us is unbelievable. The George Washington thing was phenomenal last year. So thank you, and thank all the volunteers for us. And Ms. Scullion, I'm not a voting machine expert. I do know from looking at the machines that I vote on that they're pretty ancient here. There is a paper trail. I stay, as one of the elected officials, I get a copy of the tapes. So I know there's at least a paper trail of the count. And even if that malfunctions, there is a electronic card that they can take out. I can tell you from firsthand experience, from a security standpoint, the judge of elections takes those tapes out, seals them, signs them, puts them in a sealed bag, and then tapes them shut. And then that judge of election from each precinct drives to Delaware County and signs it over in a chain of evidence type of fashion to the county office. And then I assume, but don't know for sure, that becomes the similar process as it moves up to the state, and they consolidate the county count to forward up to the state count. But I agree, there are going to be, I have read the same articles you have. There is money to fund newer type machines. The only comforting thing to me is the age of the machines here in Delaware County is they're pretty much not hackable because they're not connected to anything. They're standalone machines with paper, so we're not internet connected in most of Pennsylvania.
The vote itself can't be changed from one candidate to another as I'm voting.
That's correct.
It's not connected to an internet.
It's strictly an electromechanical button that records it to a paper tape, similar to a cash register tape. At the end of the evening, it comes out. It's a big, long list, and it has the count for each candidate on it. So that machine is not hackable. The ones that we currently vote on, I'm scared if they go to an electronic machine or an internet type of voting, then yes, it would open it up, anything there. And I know Mr. Holmes is.
So Governor Wolf then is, if there is a change, it would have to be, as he said, something that would require paper trail as well.
I believe that's the case. I think there's enough advocates for that there. Mr. Holmes.
Yeah, there's something we have to recall about paper trails, and that is that we're never going to have a system where we go back to somebody filling out a sheet of paper and signing the name and checking it off, because what you can't do is have people, after the election is over, say, oh, that wasn't my vote. That wasn't the vote I cast. I meant to cast a vote for the other person, and undo it. And we're never going to have a system that tracks the time you were in that machine to your vote, because we don't want to have that system. We don't want to reveal to anybody what your vote is. And the only exception to that is the handful of people that have access to the absentee ballots, and they read them. And they know, although if there's more than one absentee ballot, they are all opened, separated from the people who signed them in, and then opened. So you actually, unless there's only one absentee ballot in an area, you can't attribute a vote to a particular voter. But what I would encourage you to do, Ms. Scully, and you can do it, is get a poll watcher certificate and be there once in your precinct for the counting of the vote, and drop in from time to time and watch how it happens in the day. Because as much talk as there is about hacking votes, the decentralized system we have in the United States of voting is one of the great safeguards of our system. Every voting place in America has a judge of elections and a minority judge of elections, and these are people in the neighborhood who know those people. And there's only a few hundred or maybe 1,000 people that can vote in that particular precinct. So we know at the end of the day exactly who voted in 6-3, let's say my thing. And that's a number. At the end of the day, we know 527 people voted. Well, that machine will produce for us a receipt that shows that 527 people that machine was activated 527 times. It may not have cast 527 votes, because sometimes people go in and they choose not to vote for certain candidates. But it's the decentralization of that system that makes hacking on a wide-scale effort almost impossible to do. And the last electronic thing we do in Pennsylvania is touch that button and vote. After that, everything is manually tabulated, everything is taken to the counties, everything is then in the hands of people. It isn't turned back into an electronic piece of data for somebody to hack at a global level. So it's right for us to get modern equipment, it's right for us to keep an eye on this. I think the concerns about hacking are more the concerns about the false information and false narratives and false stories that are put out there that manipulated voters. But if you really, if you are, and it's obvious that you are authentically concerned about this, I do believe that you will receive a certain amount of comfort if you in this next election, which is 35 days away, make a point of getting to that and ask the judge of elections to show you what they're doing. Watch the judge of elections greet 75% of the voters by name and by face because they know them, and that kind of personal, that decentralization and that neighborhood idea around voting all across America is one of the best safeguards we have against hacking. And you really have to hack on a major scale to have an influence on any decision. So I don't say it's not something for us to worry about, but the sky isn't falling. We really do have a system that is as secure as, it's far more secure than it used to be. And it could be more secure.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. D'Amelio.
First, I want to thank you for taking this serious enough to come before us. I wish more of our residents would take voting seriously the way you do. If and when we move forward in this country where these machines can be hacked, because there isn't Wi-Fi, I do believe that is a serious concern for this country. It should be. If there's money invested to stop the Russians or even the Chinese from doing it, because don't think that they're not doing it as well or trying to do it, then we need to do that. We need to get our federal and local state officials to do whatever they can to safeguard the votes moving forward. Because as they change the machines, as technology changes, then they probably are going to be Wi-Fi'd. And if that happens, as Mr. Wexler said, I'd much rather have what we have now because of the tape that comes out. But Larry, Mr. Holmes offered a wonderful suggestion, and I welcome you to come, and I can try to get you a watcher certificate if you'd like. You can contact me, and I'd love to have you there and you see the process. As Mr. Holmes pointed out, there is the judge of elections, there are minority judges, and they take it very seriously, and they won't let anyone in the voting area if you don't have a watcher certificate. You cannot be there and having a conversation, or even at the end of the night, be in that room when it's counted, when the votes are counting, if you don't have a watcher certificate. So, again, yes.
I do understand what you're saying about knowing, they all know me when I go in, because I vote all the time, and these are my neighbors that I'm talking to as I'm in there. I'm just more concerned, not that the count is wrong, but that if I press for one person, that might register for another. But if it's not connected to the
It's not, no.
that issue becomes moot.
Right.
Not at all.
It's not. You'd have to have somebody who had the ability and the access to, not just change the machine in your precinct, but if they want to make a difference statewide, if they want to make a difference simply in a state congressional district, that's still over 100 polling places. When you consider the state, you'd have to have somebody. Right. So somebody would have to go through whatever effort it would take to make sure that every fourth Clinton vote became a Trump vote in 6-3. But for that to matter at all in any kind of statistical significance, they'd have to do that 26,000 times in Pennsylvania. So that's the kind of, that's really what we're talking about here. Is it requires hacking and fraud on such a gross scale that it's really hard to.
It's almost impossible to hack that machine.
Correct. And
if I may.
Mr. Siegel.
Yeah, the hacking that occurs doesn't happen, if it's going to happen, at your local voting machine.
In most cases, voting machines are not connected to the internet. Where it can happen is when the machines are being programmed, which are typically on computers that are centralized, whether in a county or somewhere else, that are connected to the internet, and that's where a hacking can occur that can change how votes are tallied and other things. So while in the fact that your votes aren't necessarily going to be the same, it's the centralization of the machines as they're being programmed that's the real issue. Just for people's knowledge. So, you know, it is a real concern.
So is anyone looking into that?
Yes.
That's the big issue. It's protecting the computer coding that is put into the machines. Each machine is given is coded. In our case, at somewhere Delaware County or whoever is their vendor, and every county does the same thing. And it's in that operation where it is computerized, because they don't manually go in and set every machine. It's a computerized process, and that's where your biggest concern or risk is for hacking. It's those areas.
Thank you, Commissioner Siegel. So hopefully we've allayed some of your fears, but on a go-forward basis, we
just exacerbated.
No, I think
we didn't do that, did we?
We're right.
You okay?
Now, your bigger concern, I think, the Facebook and in the old days, it was the newspaper columns that swayed us. Now it's Facebook and Instagram and Twitter. So just a lot more quick medium coming at us. And the dog park, I've asked Mr. Gentili's going to put this on the social media. We want to get this on the website and get it out and disseminate it. And we'll ask the commissioners to, we'll get it into a PDF, and we'll get it to each commissioner to send to his mail list and try and get more dissemination on this. But thank you for all the volunteer work you guys do up there. And thank you for taking care of Owen out there. It's he's a very diligent guy. So thank you very much for your work there. Our next item is number 9 is the approval of minutes.
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. D'Amelio.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the regular meeting minutes. And I just had it and I lost my agenda. Here it is. Sorry.
March 12th, 2018.
Motion is made and seconded by Mr. Siegel. Any additions, corrections? There being none, please call the roll.
Emilio?
Yes.
Mr. Oliva?
Yes.
Mr. McCluskey?
Yes.
Yes.
Mr. Siegel?
Yes.
Mr. Lewis?
Yes.
Mr. McGarity?
Yes.
Dr. Hart?
Yes.
Mr. Holmes?
Yes.
Mr. Wexler?
Yes. The next item is item 10. I would ask the board to consider a change in the agenda at this point. After item 10, because of a scheduling conflict that Mr. Holmes has from the Finance Committee, he has to leave early this evening. If you would mind, after item 10, we'd move item 12 and item 17 up prior to item 11 so that we get the finance issues through the agenda so that Mr. Holmes can leave early. Is that okay with everybody? Or is anybody opposed to that?
It's okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
Can't imagine anybody wanting me to stick around long.
Yeah, no,
Yeah, that's we don't get a lot of
I would have been upset if anybody was opposed to that.
That will shorten the meeting a little.
Proud of that.
A lot, yeah.
Get out before midnight.
Item number 10, the approval of warrants.
Mr. President, I move we approve warrant number 4 of 2018 totaling $4,208,574.22, comprising the general and sewer fund payroll for March 8, 2018 in the amount of $666,166.92, the general and sewer fund payroll for March 22, 2018 in the amount of $701,519.28, the general and sewer fund payroll for March 31 of 2018 in the amount of $129,031.31. The general fund disbursements number 4 of 2018 in the amount of $1,253,888.89. Sewer fund disbursement number 4 of 2018 in the amount of $122,422.66. Community Development Block Grant Fund disbursements number 4 of 2018 in the amount of $43,235.82. Capital Project Fund Disbursement Number 4 of 2018 in the amount of $948,645.32, and debt service automatic payments of the 2013 general obligation issue, interest only, $181,041.26, and the 2014 general obligation issue, interest only, of $154,158.78, totaling $335,200.01, and a credit card statement ending March 27, 2008, in the amount of $8,464.01.
For a second.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any questions? Please call the roll.
Mr. President, our auditor has no problems with any of these issues, and I recommend that we approve.
Thank you. Please call the roll.
Mr. D'Amelio?
Yes.
Mr. Oliva?
Yes.
Mr. McCluskey?
Yes.
Mr. Siegel?
Yes.
Mr. Lewis?
Yes.
Mr. McGarity?
Yes.
Dr. Hart?
Yes.
Mr. Holmes?
Yes.
Mr. Wexler?
Yes. If you would indulge me one more time, at the end of item 17, if I'd like to jump over, I see we have some department people, rather than keep our Public Works Department here all night, is we'll move the purchases of the Public Works vehicles up, item 21 after 17. Would anybody be opposed to that?
No problem.
All in favor?
Aye.
Great, thank you.
Mr. President, thank you. I would ask that we go to item number 12, the new item number 11, Haverford Township Business Privilege and Mercantile Tax Regulations. Our motion is to adopt updates to the Haverford Township Business Privilege and Mercantile Tax Regulations. These were presented to us by Attorney Jennifer Brown, our business tax solicitor for Haverford Township. These were presented to us at the March 5th, 2018 work session. Any questions that we had? The packet that everyone was provided has a red line version of any of the changes to the regulations. Any questions that I had were answered to my satisfaction. I recall if anyone had questions at the March 5th, 2018, I believe Attorney Brown answered their questions to their satisfaction. And I recommend that we adopt these updates.
I second the motion.
Motion made and seconded. Any questions? Please call the roll.
Mr. D'Amelio?
Yes.
Mr. Oliva?
Yes.
Mr. McCluskey?
Yes.
Mr. Siegel?
Yes.
Mr. Lewis?
Yes.
Mr. McGarity?
Yes.
Dr. Hart?
Yes.
Mr. Holmes?
Yes.
And Mr. Wexler?
Yes.
Mr. President. Mr. President, item 17, the now new item 12 of our agenda, is ordinance number P9 of 2018. I move we adopt the first reading of P9 of 2018. It is a pension retirement incentive provision. It's known as a window ordinance. It further supplements Chapter 30, Pensions and Employee Benefits, and establishing a subsection 30-33G.
Second.
Motion made and seconded.
Mr. President, as was discussed in executive session, and therefore just to be summarized now, subject to the restrictions we live under, executive sessions relating to personnel, this relates to the lawful passage of a window ordinance to address an exception to our pension rules necessary in order for us to implement the contract with the current township manager. And that will enable Mr. Gentili to retire upon the age of 60 with his years of service here in the township, which will be approximately 16 years.
Thank you.
All the steps that are necessary for us to enact such an ordinance and all the information that's required for the board to gather has been so gathered and certified by our township finance director, and I recommend that we pass this ordinance.
Thank you. Any questions? Please call the roll.
Mr. D'Amelio?
Yes.
Mr. Oliva?
Yes.
Mr. McCluskey?
Yes.
Mr. Siegel?
Yes.
Mr. Lewis?
Yes.
Mr. McGarity?
Yes.
Dr. Hart?
Yes.
Mr. Holmes?
Yes.
And Mr. Wexler?
Yes.
Okay, Bill, number 21, purchases. Motion to authorize the purchase of 4 Flink Angles snow plows, 10 by 38 from the U.S. Municipal King of Prussia, PA, under CoStar's 025-019 in the amount of $31,992.
Second.
Any questions? Please call the roll.
Mr. D'Amelio?
Yes.
Mr. Oliva?
Yes.
Mr. McCluskey?
Yes.
Mr. Siegel?
Yes.
Mr. Lewis?
Yes.
Mr. McGarity?
Yes.
Dr. Hart?
Yes.
Mr. Holmes?
Yes.
Mr. Wexler?
Yes.
Sewer Department, motion to authorize the purchase of a rigid CS10 sewer camera from H.A. Dehart and Son, Thoroughfare, New Jersey, in the amount of $11,323.76.
Second.
Any questions? Please call the roll.
Mr. D'Amelio?
Yes.
Mr. Oliva?
Yes.
Mr. McCluskey?
Yes.
Mr. Siegel?
Yes.
Mr. Lewis?
Yes.
Mr. McGarity?
Yes.
Dr. Hart?
Yes.
Mr. Holmes?
Yes.
And Mr. Wexler?
Yes. Okay, that puts us back on track on the paper to now item 14, the Westchester Pike ongoing traffic issues. And I'm going to turn it over to Commissioners D'Amelio, Siegel, and Oliva, who attended a meeting with PennDOT and our other state elected officials to update us on what happened.
Should we put the motion on the floor first and then?
Yes. So I entertain the motion.
Motion to authorize the township engineer to work with PennDOT to identify projects, anticipated costs, and schedules relative to addressing the Westchester Pike ongoing traffic issues.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, that's approved.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, as promised, this board, in our last commissioners meeting, informed you of some of the changes that were going to be taking place at 476 at Westchester Pike. We also informed you of our concerns of the traffic that will be possibly occurring in this intersection. Well, State Senator Dalen Leach organized a meeting with Mario Oliva and Mr. Siegel and myself, along with Larry Gentile, Dave Pannoni, and am I missing anybody? Oh, and Deputy Chief Joe Hagan also attended this meeting up at PennDOT. And frankly, it was about the discussion of what to do with this traffic and how we felt this traffic was going to impact the residents of Haverford Township. And thus, that's why you saw the ordinance this evening. Now, what I'd like to do is just go over this real quick again. This is the development here at Westchester Pike and 476. Yeah, we can't see it here. I'm surprised this isn't it, Dan?
No, that's not. This is where the
No, I was looking for the plans. We don't have that? Yeah, I was looking to show them again. I guess we don't. Okay, so the concerns that we have is there are several lights that are going to be placed here again. As we told you in prior meetings, when you're coming south on 476, you will not be able to merge directly onto Route 3, Westchester Pike. They're going to eliminate that lane because they're going to place a traffic light there to allow anyone who wants to go into that development to get into there. So the traffic light will be here. If you could see that, there is a traffic light here. So all traffic will come to this light. And whether if you want to make a left on Westchester Pike, you would come to this intersection or a right.
Steve?
Okay, I'm sorry.
It's now on the computer.
Oh, it's now up there. Now we can see it.
But let me rotate it so it...
So what we're trying to say is there's going to be a traffic light there, and that lane is definitely going to be eliminated. And they could.
Really? When you're coming off of the Blue Route, this lane is going to be eliminated. The one that goes west, so westbound on coming off the Blue Route on that is going to be eliminated. Then all the traffic will go.
D'Amelio?
Sort of like this. Let's just say this is 476 and you're coming up to it. So all traffic, this lane here, this lane here. So all traffic is going to come to an intersection. There's going to be a light there. And again, whether you turn left to go east on Westchester Pike or turn right, that's what you'll have to do. So there's going to be no, not on the Blue Route, right when you come off.
When you come off the Blue Route, whether you go westbound or eastbound on Westchester Pike, you're not going to be able to. You got to speak into the mic.
Right now, you can take that lane and go towards Broomall. that lane is going to be eliminated. So you will have to go with the eastbound traffic and then make a right onto the Blue Route, onto Westchester Pike to go west. So that's going to be eliminated. The traffic light there is going to allow you to move, to go into, so if you're traveling west on Westchester Pike, you'll be able to, at that intersection, you'll be able to go into that shopping center, the new shopping center there. So there's going to be another traffic light added to Westchester Pike, which is going to create more traffic.
So there is already a light there, as you know, when you come off the Pike. Now all traffic's going to go there. So that's one of our concerns. The other concern is whether or not we can get PennDOT to either widen the bridge area over there to allow for a single lane or another lane to go directly into 476 to try to ease traffic on Westchester Pike, because as everyone knows that lives around that area, the 1st, 2nd, and 4th wards, we back up all the way down Lawrence Road. We back up all the way down towards Manoa near Sacred Heart. And a lot of our residents cannot get out of that area to get to work. So they came up with some suggestions, and I'm going to leave it to Dan Siegel to talk about what they're going to try to do.
Thanks. We had this meeting with PennDOT. So just by a little more history, this board did authorize the township manager, and we sent a letter to requesting a meeting with PennDOT, which State Senator Dalen Leach convened. Also present was State Rep Jamie Santora, a representative from Greg Vitale's office, and the Chief of Staff of Senator McGarrigle, whose district this development's in. The issue that we focused on was the congestion that is literally clogging all of Haverford on Lawrence Road, Westchester Pike, and the Blue Route. Fortunately, the state officials recognized the seriousness of the problem, and PennDOT had previously at least acknowledged that this was a problem according to the information they gave us. There are what they call nearer term and long-term solutions. The nearer term solution is what's shown on the board, which is changing some of the lane configuration from Lawrence Road and Westchester Pike onto the Blue Route to facilitate a smoother flow of traffic. That's a plan that I know our engineer had also discussed with PennDOT in the past, but the problem is it costs money. And the estimated cost they gave us was $4 to $5 million to do the nearer term project. The long-term project is widening the bridge, and that's $15 million. Well, the state officials all acknowledged it was an issue, and State Representative Santora and Senator McGarrigle agreed to spearhead the efforts in the Senate and the House to request that the governor release essentially $4 to $5 million once we have engineering studies and there's an agreement with PennDOT and the township, so that this type of construction can be done. They have figures, they didn't have them there, as to how much it will. It's not going to cure the problem, but it will release a good portion of the stress on the intersection. So the next steps are that Senator McGarrigle and Senator Leach have to send a letter to the governor from the Senate. State Representative Santora and State Representative Vitale have to do a similar one from the House. And then once the engineering work is done and the funds are released, this project, independent of what's happening in Marple, can begin. And this will, it's not going to cure the problem, but everyone agreed this is a good beginning of the solution, and they refer to the $4 or $5 million as pocket change. But it's not our pocket change when you look at a $40 million budget. We can't afford this project to take it on as Haverford, nor should we. So that's where we are at this point. The motion tonight was to authorize the township engineer to do the preliminary work and then coordinate with PennDOT, and then we have to make certain that our state officials work to make certain that the governor releases the money that is within his control so that this project can get on the board and can begin as soon as there's agreed engineering plans and funding. So that's where we are right now.
I just want to go over the map here to talk about what would happen. So there would be a lane continuously flowing onto the Blue Route. So you would have traffic here, the right lane would continuously flow, and there would be a barrier keeping the traffic coming off of Lawrence Road from from intersecting here. And then the traffic from Lawrence Road coming onto the Blue Route would then loop up here and go onto this new part here and onto the Blue Route to head, that's northbound on the Blue Route. So you would have a continuous flow of traffic coming off the Blue Route, off of Westchester Pike, westbound, onto the Blue Route, northbound, would never stop. The traffic light would be green all the time. Then you would have all other traffic coming up through here, which would, the continuous flow of traffic would also keep people from jumping across. You know, people, if you've ever been down there, you see people in the left lane, they wait till the last second, then they jump over, and then everybody behind them creates this domino effect, and everybody hits the brakes and slows down traffic. So that would take care of that problem also.
Just one final thing. Ann and I attended the Planning Commission meeting for Marple, and at that meeting, they did approve this project. So this project's going through. We're not debating that, and we're not fighting the project itself, the development. We're concerned about the safety of the residents with the traffic, but, I'm sorry?
And Marple is voting tonight.
And Marple is voting tonight. We have, right, and we... Right, the new development, and actually, we would have been there if we didn't have our own commissioners meeting, but it was going to go through anyway. And again, that's not the issue. The development is not the issue. It is the traffic. But we will keep you posted, and if we need the residents, we may come to you to ask the residents for support in contacting our state and federal officials and trying to obtain some of this funding to increase the lanes here. Dave, you want to add to this, Mr. Pinano? You want to add anything to this?
No, I think. Thanks, John. No, I think the commissioners accurately represented the next step. The next step is to work with PennDOT to come up with a very logical plan for our local representatives to fund.
Thank you.
Gentlemen, thank you very much. Thank you very much for your work and the presentation.
The only thing I would ask is if we can get this up on our website, if it's not.
Okay. Yeah, we'll get it, we'll have it.
If you can.
Yep, we will. Okay, our new item, I believe 15, is ordinance P19, 2017, wastewater treatment, first reading. You want to take that one?
Yeah, I got it. Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion to adopt the first reading of ordinance number P19, 2017, further amending and supplementing ordinance number 1960 as amended and known as the general laws of the Township of Haverford at Chapter 180, wastewater treatment, by adding the City of Philadelphia Water Department and wastewater control regulations by reference.
Second.
Motion made and seconded by Mr. Lewis. Any questions on this? Please call the roll.
Mr. D'Amelio? Yes. Mr. Oliva?
Yes.
Mr. McCluskey? Yes. Mr. Siegel?
Yes.
Mr. Lewis?
Yes.
Mr. Garrity?
Yes.
Dr. Hart?
Yes.
And Mr. Holmes is absent. Mr. Wexler?
Yes. Next item, new 16, ordinance P1, 2018.
President.
Mr. Oliva.
I'd like to make a motion to adopt the second reading of ordinance number P1, 2018, by amending Chapter 126, Parks, Playgrounds, and Township Property, Article 1, Public Parks and Playgrounds.
Motion is made. Is there a second? Second. Motion made and seconded by Mr. McCluskey. Any questions or comments? This is second reading. Please call the roll.
D'Amelio?
Yes.
Mr. Oliva?
Yes.
Mr. McCluskey?
Yes.
Mr. Siegel?
Yes.
Mr. Lewis?
Yes.
McGarity?
Yes.
Dr. Hart?
Yes.
Mr. Wexler?
No. No.
Mr. President?
Yes, Mr. Siegel.
In looking at the ordinance number, the one we just voted on, there was a request to, essentially a clarification requested to include Coopertown Park referred to, I'm just trying to find the note here, here it is, as would be called Highland Farms, and then Coopertown in parentheses, to that ordinance as well, to just clarify that should be included.
Okay.
It's listed as Highland Farms, and we just should add in parentheses, Coopertown.
Just for clarification.
And I don't know that we need to vote on that, but it's just would be
We'll
clarification.
so enter that via the minutes and, thank you. Next item is new 17, ordinance P7, 2018.
Mr. President,
Mr. Oliva, sorry.
I'd like to make a motion to adopt the second reading of ordinance number P7, 2018, authorizing traffic restrictions on the following highways: at the intersection of Lanark Avenue, south direction of travel at Westwood Park Road, rescind sticker parking on Claremont Boulevard for the properties of 1, 9, 14, and 15, and then special purpose parking in front of 160 Juniper Road.
Second.
Was that Westwood Park Road or West Park Road?
West Park Road.
West Park, okay.
Yeah. Westwood Park Road is a different road.
Right, that's what you said, yeah. Okay.
Did I say West? Really?
Any other questions? Please call the roll.
Mr. D'Amelio?
Yes.
Mr. Oliva?
Yes.
Mr. McCluskey?
Yes.
Mr. Siegel?
Yes.
Mr. Lewis?
Yes.
Mr. McGarity?
Yes.
Dr. Hart?
Yes.
Mr. Wexler?
Yes. New item 18, ordinance P8, 2018. Mr. D'Amelio.
Make a motion to adopt the first reading of ordinance number P8, 2018, amending and supplementing the general laws of the Township of Haverford, Chapter 182, zoning by adding certain new use definitions in Section 182-106B, and further by adding subsection 182-405B3J, establishing and regulating the sale of consumer fireworks in the C4 Highway Commercial Zoning District.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Mr. D'Amelio?
Yes.
Mr. Oliva?
Yes.
Mr. McCluskey?
Yes.
Mr. Siegel?
Yes.
Mr. Lewis?
Yes.
Mr. McGarity?
Yes.
Dr. Hart?
Yes.
Mr. Wexler?
Yes. Next item is new 19, was 18, application to Department of Transportation for traffic signal approval along Westchester Pike Corridor.
Mr. President?
Mr. Siegel.
Motion to adopt resolution number 2089-2018, authorizing the township manager to submit the application for traffic signal approval for the improvements at 9 intersections along the Westchester Pike Corridor between the Coles Driveway and Glengarry Drive to the Pennsylvania Department of Transportation, and to sign those applications on behalf of the municipality.
Second.
Motion made and seconded.
Real quick, Bill.
Yep.
Dave, does this include the handicap sensor?
No, Mr. D'Amelio, this is the, we've already started.
Are these adapters?
This is the traffic adaptive.
Okay, I got it.
And
I
just
got
for record, I've already started with Mr. Doherty, the necessary steps to improve that intersection.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
And if I just may, the intersections beyond Glengarry heading west are all part of what will be done as part of the new development in Marple. There are those 7 traffic lights that are beyond that.
Correct.
So they'll all be tied together from New Ardmore Avenue to Township Line.
Great.
We'll see how that works.
Yeah, so at 5 in the morning, I'm not stopping at every single traffic light coming down.
Please call the roll.
Traffic.
Mr. D'Amelio?
Yes.
Mr. Oliva?
Yes.
Mr. McCluskey?
Yes.
Mr. Siegel?
Yes.
Mr. Lewis?
Yes.
Mr. McGarity?
Yes.
Dr. Hart?
Yes.
Mr. Wexler?
Yes. Resolution 2090-2018, liquid fuels.
Mr. President,
Mr. Oliva.
I'd like to make a motion to adopt resolution number 2090-2018, authorizing the township manager to submit the application for county aid in the amount of $66,960 for the salary and benefits cost of the employee performing 2017 maintenance and repairs of traffic signals and streetlights.
Second.
Sorry, street signs, not streetlights.
Motion made and seconded. Any questions? Please call the roll.
Mr. D'Amelio?
Yes.
Mr. Oliva?
Yes.
Mr. McCluskey?
Yes.
Mr. Siegel?
Yes.
Mr. Lewis?
Yes.
Mr. McGarity?
Yes.
Dr. Hart?
Yes.
And Mr. Wexler?
Yes. Mr. Siegel.
Motion to adopt resolution number 2091-2018, supporting common sense gun laws, affirming our commitment to end gun violence, and opposing firearms legislation that threatens public safety.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Mr. McGarry.
Can I just ask on this, when it says supporting common sense gun laws, but it doesn't spell out what common sense gun laws are? Can you tell me what that is?
Yeah, under the resolution, the laws that are suggested are those, I don't know if you want me to read them all, but they're prohibiting persons.
You should read the resolution.
Yeah, let's read it.
Yeah.
I'll read the whole resolution. Whereas protecting public safety in our community is one of our most serious and fundamental responsibilities. Whereas every day, on average, 96 Americans are killed by gun violence, including 7 children. Whereas Americans are 25 times more likely to be killed with guns than are people in other developed countries. Whereas in 2016, 1,600 American children were killed with guns and at least 6,000 shot and injured. This equates to an average of 23 children shot every day. Whereas our schools should be safe environments where students and teachers need not fear gun violence. Whereas children born in the United States after the mass shooting of students in Columbine on April 20, 1999, have known no other reality but fear of and preparation for gun violence in their schools. Whereas on February 14, 2018, a former student at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas School in Parkland, Florida, opened fire with a semi-automatic rifle, killing 7 and injuring 14 students and adults. Whereas American women are at an elevated risk of firearm violence and are 11 times more likely to be shot and killed than are women in other developed countries. Whereas recent tragedies highlight the need to prevent mentally ill persons from purchasing, obtaining, or using firearms. Whereas gun violence is a concern not only in our schools but across our community, and every person deserves to live in a neighborhood free from the impacts of gun violence. Whereas support for the Second Amendment rights of law-abiding citizens must not be made at the expense of keeping guns away from dangerous people. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Board of Commissioners of Haverford Township registers to its state and federal elected officials and to the President of the United States its strong support for laws that, 1, prohibit persons convicted of domestic violence crimes, including violent misdemeanors, or who have a domestic abuse restraining order in force against them to transport, receive, or possess firearms or ammunition, and enact laws that require prohibited domestic abusers to turn in firearms they already own. 2, permit courts to require a person to surrender his or her firearms if there is clear and convincing evidence that he or she has used, displayed, or threatened to use firearms or dangerous weapons. 3, restrict the sale to and possession of firearms by mentally ill persons if there is clear and convincing evidence that he or she has used, displayed, or threatened to use firearms or dangerous weapons, or otherwise acted in a manner demonstrating that he or she may use firearms or dangerous weapons. 4, require gun owners to require lost or stolen handguns, to report lost or stolen handguns within 48 hours of the time he or she knew or reasonably should have known of the loss or theft, colloquially known as the Lost or Stolen Reporting Requirement Act. 5, prevent known and suspected terrorists, those convicted of violent hate crimes, and those with a history of domestic abuse from illegally buying guns. 6, require universal background checks on all firearm sales and transfers of ownership, including online and at gun shows, with all background checks to be performed through a federal firearms licensed dealer. 7, require trigger locks on all firearms in houses where children are present. 8, ban the sale of military-style assault weapons. 9, ban the sale of high-capacity magazines or clips that can hold more than 10 bullets at a time. 10, require any person seeking to own, possess, purchase, or otherwise acquire a firearm to successfully complete a safety training course that includes live firing, a safe handling demonstration, and a written test of firearms laws. 11, ban products commonly known as bump stocks that render semi-automatic weapons capable of automatic fire. And 12, support the availability and funding of mental health and substance abuse treatment so all individuals who are in need of help have sufficient access to these services and the support of enhanced mental health services for children.
Mr. Siegel, thank you for reading that in its entirety. Any comments?
I just want to say, I
Again.
agree with a lot of the things that are in there, such as a semi-automatic weapon. That certainly isn't used for hunting or anything like that. We take these idiots that are out there and they're going to churches and synagogues and just picking people out and shooting them. I agree with that, Dan. Are you saying here, though, a person cannot buy a handgun for protection of themselves? Is that what you're
not
saying?
in this at
You're
all.
not saying that here?
No.
Okay, because I favor the Second Amendment for that reason, because where my brother lives, if you don't have a handgun, you're in trouble, because your nearest neighbor is 5 miles away, and he's covered by the state police, which could be 25 miles away. So if you have a problem, don't look for too much help coming there right away.
No, it doesn't prohibit a handgun, Jimmy, this ordinance.
This doesn't prohibit that. Okay, well, I just wanted to make sure, because
And look, you know, this board, you looked at the recent events, tragic events that have taken place in the last, 10, 15, 20 years maybe. Our children and our grandchildren are at stake here, and we need to do something from a local level to make sure that our federal officials know that our residents have come to us, and actually you didn't really have to come to us, because we looked at this and said, you know, we need to do something about this. But Dan brought up an excellent point too, as well as the mental health issues here in the United States. That needs to be addressed as well, because many people who own these weapons or get a hold of these weapons are getting them and using them with mental issues. And you know, we need to do something, because we can't have our children being literally slaughtered. I mean, you know about the ones that died, but there are many young children that have been wounded severely for life that will never be normal again, and that's equally as bad. So,
but my point is, and this is how I feel, if I'm in a church and a guy comes in there, some creep comes in there and starts shooting, I want to have a gun so I can turn around and shoot that SOB.
well, you can. You'll be able to own a gun.
Okay,
to
that's
do
all I
that.
wanted to know.
Oh yeah, you'll be able to do that. And we're not saying that you can't defend yourself. We're not asking the Second Amendment to be eliminated. Am I correct, Mr. Siegel?
That's not what this
Right.
resolution
So we're not
says.
asking for the Second Amendment or asking our federal officials to do away with the Second Amendment. That is not what we're saying here.
We're saying common sense gun laws.
Common sense gun laws.
Thank you. And hopefully our senior officials at the county and the state will listen to us in federal.
You want to talk first?
Mr. McCloskey, you have something?
Yeah, I just, unfortunately, I missed last week, so I didn't get to comment on this at all. But what we're doing tonight is an important action, and I don't mean to minimize it, but I do want to assure that we as a society don't move on so quickly from what happened in Florida, that the reality is that there still hasn't been any active state, or at least in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, state or federal laws that have been passed that does any of this. So I certainly support this resolution tonight, and I certainly would support pushing state and federal officials to do something along these lines. But I just want to stress and state publicly that this resolution doesn't actually do any of these things, and if we really want change, people are going to have to continue to keep standing up for it and keep contacting state and federal officials and saying that they demand that kind of change, because the reality is the fact that a kid went into a school in Florida or a kid went into a school in Texas or anything is just as insane today, 3 months after the fact, that it was the day after the fact. So, you know, I don't mean to be sort of like a wet blanket on this resolution, but I do want the public and everyone to know that, you know, this is a step, and it's a good step, but it's a large problem that needs a bunch of steps. So that's all.
If I may.
Mr. Siegel.
Yeah, for people who know me, they know I've been involved in this issue since I was a sophomore in college. That's 40 years ago. And there is a difference now, and this resolution, I think, in some ways demonstrates that. You wouldn't have seen local boards passing resolutions like this even 5 or 10 years ago. You didn't see that for people who remember, in 1994, the Pennsylvania State House actually passed a ban on semi-automatic weapons, and that was sidetracked through a commission that I was actually on. This has been a long-term issue, but there is something different. In the past, you didn't see local communities speaking out. You didn't see local officials, and although our ability to legislate is extremely limited by what's called preemption, you didn't see these resolutions. Now communities, media, other cities are realizing that our elected officials who can make the difference have to be aware that they can and should do something about an issue. It's not going to be solved overnight. The funding is important. And when I was on the commission in 1993 that looked at these laws, one of the things that everyone said was you need community health initiatives. That's one of the things that we have suggested in this resolution. But you are seeing a difference where people recognize that, yes, if someone wants to have a gun for self-protection, they can still do so. But the need for semi-automatic weapons is not there. It's a different world, and I don't believe this issue is going to disappear in the same way it often does through the ebb and flow of these events, and I certainly hope not. And I applaud and thank this board for being willing to take this step. I don't know if it would have happened 5 or 10 years ago, but whatever it is, it's important. And, you know, for those who talk about the Second Amendment, and I've probably debated it 100 times, remember, it talks about a right to bear arms, but there is no one, including the U.S. Supreme Court, who ever said it's absolute. No one believes that every convicted felon is entitled to a weapon, or that murderers, rapists, etc. are. It is what is a reasonable regulation, and that's what we're talking about. That's what's in this resolution, and that's where we need to go to try to build a coalition of bipartisanship that can finally do something.
Thank you, Mr. Singh.
Can I ask a question, Bill? I mean, one of the things we put in the resolution, Dan, did you put in there was about anyone convicted of, or is it convicted of a spousal abuse?
There's a variety of regulations relating to spousal abuse, including those who have what are called PFAs, protection from abuse orders, and I know that our police actually will enforce those as well, where they take firearms out of the homes.
Do you take firearms from those that are right now? Just so we make sure we.
Yes, if the court orders the removal of firearms, we do remove them, turn them over to the sheriff's department.
Oh, good, that's happening now. I just wanted to clarify that so people understood that that is happening.
Well, just as a distinction, Steve, what the deputy chief is talking about is when it's in a court order. So it's not like a guaranteed if someone is convicted of domestic violence. It's up to the judge to make that decision when there's people in front of them. And unfortunately, not every judge does it. Now, I think in Delaware County, a lot of judges do, but that's not equally applied across the Commonwealth.
Right. So what we're saying is there are no laws now that the judge. It's his discretion, is that what you're saying?
Right, his or her discretion, right.
That's what we want to change, but at least we're getting some of them.
Right. But that just...
I understand.
Yeah,
I get it.
Okay, I think, thank you very much for writing that. Thank you, gentlemen, for your comments. I'm proud to be part of a board. This is a bipartisan issue. There was a great article that interested me today in the paper about a group at Conestoga High School that is now... All the activism that we've seen come out of Florida, I think, is phenomenal. But as Mr. McCluskey pointed out, this is not an issue that's going to change in a week. But that generation that's graduating from high school today, if they register to vote, as this activism group does, and they exercise their rights, that's the generation that's going to make a change. And I'm happy to see that we're at the forefront of doing that and protecting them. But down the road, it's their vote. And we talked about, Ms. Scullion, your activism here and your concern is a great example to those young people here as well to do that. And so I'm happy to see that the young people now realize that that right to vote is key for them to make any change. And that's how people that get elected affect change. They get voted out of office where they understand where they need to be to support their constituents. So, gentlemen, thank you for this. Mr. Gentili, if you would please call the roll.
Mr. D'Amelio?
Yes.
Mr. Oliva?
Yes.
Mr. McCluskey? Yes. Mr. Siegel?
Yes.
Mr. Lewis?
Yes.
Mr. McGarity?
Thank you for reading all that out, Dan, and I appreciate all that. And since it's satisfying to me about my handgun and having the Second Amendment right for that purpose, I vote yes.
Dr. Hart?
Definitely yes.
And Mr. Wexler?
Yes. Very good. Having completed all our agenda items, we now have a continuation of the citizens' forum for any citizen who would like to address the board on any item. It does not have to be on the agenda at this point.
I just want to thank you for that last thing that you did. It's very important, and I appreciate it.
Thank you. I'll answer for the board. It's nice to be thanked for some of the things that we do. So, but thank you very much, and thank you for your concern that you presented earlier, Ms. Gillian. Is there any new business?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Mr.
I'd like to nominate someone for the Parks Board, the addition.
Okay.
Can I do that soon?
Yes, you can. And the reason that was, just as a point, I didn't get a chance to email everybody. I asked Gloria to take all that big laundry list of appointments that we had vacancies for. Since we voted to enlarge some of the boards, it became apparent that we were going to come across applicants as the interest grew. So under new business, for anybody that we've already interviewed, that's the appropriate place to do that. So go ahead, Mr. D'Amelio.
I'd like to nominate Nicole McLean.
Nicole McLean for the Parks and Recs Board.
Second. Can I just say thank you, Richard Dockery, for coming tonight?
Thank you. Okay. And any other nominations?
And Kelly?
I'll nominate Brian Long.
Can I third it? Thank you.
Second.
Sorry, who was that? Brian Long?
Brian Long. How many vacancies do we have left there? Who's the, Mario, you Parks?
Yes.
Are we increased it to 9. Does this make 9 or does this make?
This makes 9.
Make 9, I think. Yeah, we were at.
So we have 1 vacancy.
Yes, adding 1 would make 9.
Okay. So we have 2, Nicole McLean and Brian Long. Please call the roll.
Mr. D'Amelio?
McLean.
Mr. Oliva?
Ms. McLean?
Mr. McCluskey?
Mr. Long.
Mr. Siegel?
Mr. Long.
Mr. Lewis?
Ms. McLean.
McGarity?
Ms. McLean.
Dr. Hart?
Ms. McLean.
And Mr. Wexler?
Ms. McLean. Congratulations, Ms. Nicole McLean. Any other new business? Other business, Mr. D'Amelio.
Thank you, Mr. President. First, I'd like to say that on Saturday, May 5th, 2018 at noon at the Haverford Township Middle School, there'll be the K-9 competition. Support your favorite K-9 is the complete article search, apprehensive work, and obstacle course. How many years is this now, Chief? How many years? Do you know?
It'll be the 4th annual.
4th annual. It was very nice last year. It was a great, well attended too. Very nice.
What's the date on that?
It is May 5th, 2018 at noon.
May 5th, okay.
Also, we have in the first ward, we're going to be doing the trail cleanup. I believe that is 2 weeks from Saturday, Tim? Do you know? Yeah. So if anyone in the first ward or anywhere else wants to join us to help clean up that trail, we welcome you. And I believe that's at 12 noon, Tim? Yeah. And that's it.
Thank you, Mr. D'Amelio. Mr. Oliva.
Yeah, I'd like to talk about the Haverford Home and Garden Show, which is taking place April 15th, this Sunday, at Haverford Reserve. That's 6,000 Parkview Drive. We will have we have 80 vendors. These are local architects, contractors, arborists, interior decorators, landscaping, realtors. We have presentations throughout the day. We will have Mike McGrath of WHYY from You Bet Your Garden. He will be there speaking. Also, there'll be a lot of make and take workshops, so you'll be able to do wine making, flower arranging, making a terrarium, painting a wood pallet sign, and for the kids, building an electric motor, creating an edible birdhouse, creating a decoupage mason jar vase, or votive. Advanced registration is required, and you can go out to haverfordhomeandgardenshow.org and sign up for those workshops ahead of time. And so we also have Marketplace up there for home and garden. We have plant sale, perennials and cold season veggies. There'll be a master gardener there to answer any questions that you may have. We have a furniture flip contest. There will be door prizes. We have food trucks on site for your eating pleasure. It is $5 per person. Kids under 12 are free. Parking is available on site, and you can also park at the middle school. We have a shuttle taking people up from there to the reserve. And we have some great door prizes. I mean, there's a barbecue grill. There's a lot of stuff up there. So please come and join us on the 15th at 10 o'clock at Haverford Reserve. I have nothing further.
Thank you. Mr. McCluskey.
That was enough.
It was enough?
Yeah.
I'm glad you covered that. But it should be a great event, Mario. Haverford Alliance for Drug Awareness, as I mentioned last month, is having their annual comedy night. It's a major fundraiser for the organization. So if you can make it out, it's April 20th at 7 o'clock. Again, that's April 20th at 7 o'clock. It's going to take place this year at Trinity Christian Church. It's at 560 Mill Road. It was a fun event last year, and I'm sure it'll be a fun event this year. So anybody that can make it out, be greatly appreciated. You can get tickets available online or at the door, assuming they don't sell out. And then just a couple other events that are coming up in the 3rd Ward. This year is the 50th anniversary of the St. Denis Fun Fair that happens in the first 2 weeks in May. They're always looking for volunteers, so if anybody wants to volunteer. But if not, you should go out and check out the fair. Hopefully it'll warm up by then. It's a sure sign of spring. And then the American Legion Post next to Grassland Park, American Legion Post 338, is having their annual Italian evening on May 13th, starting at 6 o'clock. It's a fundraiser for that location. So if you're in or around the area or in or around Grassland Park, come support the American Legion. And that's all I have.
Thank you. Mr. Siegel.
Yes. First, a reminder that Commissioner McCluskey, Commissioner Hart, and I will have a joint 3rd, 4th, and 8th Ward constituent meeting in this room on April 25th at 7 p.m. It's open to the public, obviously. We'll have township officials here to answer questions as well, so all are invited. Something I wanted to bring up for a little while, and Mr. Gentile hasn't been here, but something I want to compliment him on. There's a magazine called Government Technology for the geeks who actually care about this stuff, and it comments in their issue, their recent issue, that 2018 is the time that local governments should finally consider hiring a social media coordinator, talking about that in many ways that's now the only way that some people interact with their government. And I just want to thank him for having recognized that a few years ago, and last year our social media coordinator, who's also filming the meeting tonight, is full-time, and that is a full-time job. So I just want to commend you for that and thank you, because it's needed, and the residents do a large portion, especially as things evolve, use social media to get information, and the township's Facebook feed is excellent. And we're moving dramatically forward, so thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Siegel.
And one other item. One person I did not thank about the PennDOT meeting was Judy Trombetta, who oddly is not here tonight, who is Senator Leach's aide. And she was the person who spearheaded the meeting, arranged for it, was there, and was in many ways instrumental in getting our meeting with PennDOT. So usually she's here every meeting, and the one meeting we want to thank her, she's not. The other thing is that, you know, we live in a time where you don't hear a lot of sort of cooperation among elected officials and government. Tonight, I think, demonstrates that that's not necessarily the case here. The issues with PennDOT were Commissioner D'Amelio, Ms. Oliva, and I at the meeting. You had Senators Leach and McGarrigle, whose perspectives on things are often very different, Representative Santora and Vitale. We all recognize, though, that there was a common need, which was trying to do something about Westchester Pike and Lawrence Road, and it showed bipartisanship. Let's work together. And what was only about a 30-minute meeting or so was as productive as any meeting I've been at since I've been a commissioner. It just, everyone recognized a need, the people from the township, the people from PennDOT, and it worked. And it's the same thing with the gun resolution tonight. That is not a Republican or Democratic issue. It is a common sense issue. And in something that people don't really know about, we've had a school board committee on this board for many years, and we never met with the school board. And with some changes, we're now communicating, and we have an excellent relationship and dialogue just to talk with the school board. So while things may be gridlocked in other places, not just Lawrence Road and Westchester Pike, at least in this area, we're not seeing that, you know, and I'm really thrilled because tonight's meeting really sort of encapsulates it all, and I just want to thank everyone for that.
Dan, can I just say something about Judy? She attended all of those planning commission meetings as well.
Yes.
So she was well informed, and she was at those planning commissions, and I too want to thank her. Thank you for saying that. And it was a good that we had our state representative there for at least our ward, the first ward, and the 9th, Jamie Santora, who really was taking the bull by the horn at that meeting. He was very aggressive in saying that we need to do something, and Dale Leach and Senator McGarrigle's office, everybody, you said, it was all unison. It was a beautiful meeting, and it was 30 minutes, and it was one of the most productive meetings I was at.
I've never seen anything like that.
Yeah.
I really haven't seen all these Republican and Democrat all together and all just right off the bat agreeing on everything and talking together, working everything, and the meeting took 30 minutes and $4.5 million ramp. You know, reconstruction there and everything, and everybody agreed to everything, so it was very refreshing.
Now we just need the money.
Need the money.
That's good. Thank you for not taking Commissioner Holmes with you, though. It wouldn't have been 30 minutes.
It wouldn't have been.
It wouldn't have been.
2 hours and 30 minutes.
Mr. Lewis.
Thanks, Mr. President. Hopefully this is one of the last of my College Avenue Bridge replacement updates. There was a stakeholder meeting in late March attended by RoadCon, who's a contractor, SEPTA, Verizon, Comcast, Michael Baker Engineering, Haverford Township Administration, Police, and they shared their progress, which I won't get into detail, but given all the weather, the nor'easters and the bad weather we've had, I kind of expected there would be an additional delay, but PennDOT is saying that they expect the bridge to be reopened on May 22nd. So it's hard to believe when you go down and look at it, but they're going to be working weekends if required, and they're also going to be coordinating with SEPTA in closing the rail line as needed to meet that deadline. So that's somewhat encouraging. Hopefully they'll meet that deadline. Commissioner McCluskey and I will be hosting the second round of this is the closure of Ardmore Avenue bridges. Unfortunately, that's going to come next, and that's going to be a 1.5-year project at least, and far more disruptive than the College Avenue Bridge, given there's, I think, roughly 3 times as much traffic on that road. Is that right? And Deputy Chief Hagan? Yeah, so it's going to be a major inconvenience to a lot of people for a long period of time. So Commissioner McCluskey and I will be hosting a public meeting sometime in early May to educate the public, get input, hear your concerns, and answer your questions. So more to come on that. So that's all I have, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. McGarry.
Yes, first, I'd like to thank everybody out in TV land and Connor Quinn and Mr. McCluskey. Kevin Kane yesterday had their 5K race, and what a success. I mean, it's been successful. I think it's the largest run in Haverford Township, or the second largest, but it is very successful. And even though with the weather being very cold, the crowd turned out, and it was just wonderful that all of you came and supported this cause. Now, I have a couple other causes. The Billy Lake ALS cause is coming up on April the 27th. That's a Friday night at Tip O'Leary's, and they're asking $35 a ticket if anybody's interested in going to that, or anybody in TV land. Also, Jeff Kelly, the brother of Jimmy Kelly, who's our lieutenant here in Haverford Township Police Force, he lost his little girl a couple years ago, and it was really very saddening. But the organization that was very helpful to Jeff and his family are having a fundraiser Saturday, April the 21st at Tip O'Leary's. So if you could support that, we would appreciate that very much. I thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McGarry. Dr. Hart.
Yes, first off, I wanted to thank Dr. Gauss for coming to talk about the parking situation. It's definitely a problem that's in need of not a street-by-street solution, but more systemic approach. And I would certainly be happy to serve on any subcommittee with you to try to look at something more that we can, while encouraging residents to use public transportation, also keep our neighborhoods give people places to park. And on Penfield, one of your daughter's neighbors had a commuter screaming at her because to move a car. So it's something that we need to approach more systemically. Along with the events at the Grange this weekend and the Haverford Home and Garden Show, the Brookline Civic Association, they're having the open day parade, which was postponed this past Saturday because of the expected snow, but it's supposed to be a 70-degree day, so I think that's Saturday morning. The following weekend is the Earth Day celebration at the Creek, Saturday the 21st from 9 to 12. There's numerous activities helping to build a pollinator garden, mason bee houses, bluebird workshops, tree planting, and test drive an electric car, and Smokey the Bear will also be making an appearance. And finally, just again, our constituent meeting is April 25th in this building at 7 o'clock. It's the 3rd, 4th, and 8th wards. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Hart. Two items in the 9th Ward this weekend. On Saturday in the morning, the Hilltop Baseball Parade kicks off their season, which was delayed a week by the weather. So they did play some games, but their parade is this weekend at 9 o'clock, going from Manoa Field down to Hilltop. And then 2 years ago, this board appropriated a ton of money for the Bureau of Fire for some new fire trucks. And Saturday, April 14th, Manoa Fire Company has invited you all the commissioners and all the public, to the dedication of their new pumper at 3 o'clock in the afternoon at the Manoa Fire Company at 115 South Eagle Road. And that's all I have. I would entertain a motion to adjourn at this point.
Motion to adjourn.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.